In this video, we are going to compare Design X 2022 to Design X Essentials 2022. Now, Design X Essentials is a new product this year, and what it is a subset of Design X. Now, what is Design X? Design X is the most powerful, most well-known reverse engineering tool on the market. It is just the best product out there. So this new product is really meant to get people into reverse engineering that maybe don't need all the tools of the full-blown Design X. So we're going to show you the differences by walking through the menus of both at the same time and highlighting the differences between the two products to help you determine, what the right product is for you. And if you want to do a free trial of either one of these products, you can get in touch with us at the contact info here below, or in the description in the below. There's a link to a quick contact form, and you can just give us your info, and then we'll send you a link to download either product and try it out. Also, we've got videos on Design X on our YouTube channel, and we've just created some new ones on Design X Essentials that take you through some workflows that can help you, along with the tutorials that come with the product. So let's go through and show the differences between the two products. All right, to get started, what I thought we would do was put the two products right on top of each other and walk through all the menus and really kind of highlight the differences between the two products. I think this would really be the most visual way to kind of see the differences. So we've got Design X here at the top, version 2022, and Design X Essentials down here at the bottom, also version 2022. So let's walk through the menus and kind of show some of the differences, and we'll talk a little bit in depth on some of the major differences between the products. So let's start with the home menu and go to the import tab. Now, here in Design X, the full version, of course, you have all of the different types of mesh and point cloud formats. A lot of these are just flavors of different scanners. And then what you have here, of course, you've got your neutral CAD formats like iJustStep, Parasolid, but then you have some direct CAD formats. And those include CATIA, Creo, Siemens NX, SolidWorks, and AutoCAD. If we go down now to the Design X Essentials and go to the Import tab, the biggest difference you're going to see, of course, you have some of those different flavors of scanners. Again, both point cloud and polygon data, which would be like STL. And then you also have your iJustStep, Parasolid, but you have no direct CAD interfaces. It's not a huge deal most of the time. You can usually get a neutral file, but for some customers who want to be able to load in those direct formats and not have to translate or lose stuff in a neutral format, that's a consideration. So you do not have the direct CAD formats in Design X Essential. Okay, so moving on, the other thing you don't have is the live capture capability, and what that allows you to do is basically run some of the scanners right inside Design X. So you've got Creaform and you got some others in here. Okay. Now, what that essentially does is opens up that scanner software in the background and runs it, but you're doing it all inside Design X. Now, some people like that. I personally don't. I run the scanners in their native software. To me, it's just easier to access everything from there. And sometimes there's just certain features I want to use. I just find it easier. Then when I'm done, I export a file and then import it. So you don't have any of that here in Design X Essentials. If you have used Design X and you like that, you would not have that feature. So keep that in mind. Moving on, you have the Points tab in Design X. That's for all your point cloud manipulation. You do not have that option at all here in Design X Essentials. Now, you can still import point cloud data and you can cut sections through it, but you're really limited to what you can do. You can't align them and then merge them and triangulate them into a polygon mesh or do any filtering or sampling. So if you work with long range scanners or other scanners that really save out to a point cloud and really want to be able to bring that in and work with it, you're going to need the full blown Design X. You have very, very limited point cloud tools here in Design X Essentials. So keep that in mind. Let's move on to the Polygons tab. And a couple things right away that are in Polygons. This is going to be all your polygon manipulation tools. So you don't have any of these wizards, this mesh buildup wizard. You don't have the healing wizard. You don't have also, this is Design X here, so you have them here, obviously. There's also this run scan process, which is like batch processing where you can import and have it automatically do certain things. Like if you had a whole bunch of scan data and you want to bring it in, and you want to filter out outliers, and then you wanted to, let's say, decimate and do a bunch of things and automate it, you would not be able to do that in Design X Essentials. So you don't have that. You don't have any of these mesh buildup wizards. Now, as scanners get better and better and the quality of the scan data gets better, you may find I don't use these anyways, almost never, these two here. But occasionally you get scan data from somebody else. You want to be able to clean it up and have it fix it. These are nice to have. So just keep in mind, you don't have these. The other one you don't have is the Smart Brush. And this is something I use a fair amount because this has things like decimate, smooth. I use a smoothing tool a lot, clean, enhance, deform. So if you're bringing in scan data, you want to smooth it out or decimate it or clean it up, you would not have that Smart Brush tool to do that. This is only in Design X, and you can see down here in Design X Essentials, you don't have it. So keep that in mind. So if you're really doing heavy polygon manipulation, some of these could be of concern. Now, moving on, you have, merge and combine. Those are standard. You've got fill holes, you've got defeatures. And again, you have those down here, fill holes, defeature. The one thing also that's of difference is right here, the global remesh. You only have remesh, where if you go back up into Design X here, not only do you have remesh, you have optimized mesh, which I don't personally use a lot. That's more for CAE and other analysis software where it just cleans up the mesh. But the one I do use is rewrap. And if you want to see a good video on rewrap, go watch our video on doing hybrid modeling. Anytime I'm doing hybrid modeling with a very organic shape, I'm often using rewrap. It's not to say you couldn't do it without the rewrap, but it just definitely would be a lot more work. So think about that. So you do have global remesh, which goes back and remeshes it, tries to smooth things out and fix things, but you don't have the optimized nor the rewrap. So be aware of that. You've got decimate. Let's go down here. Decimate and smooth. You don't have subdivide. You don't have the roll and unroll. We're going to do a demo on that. Which very specific tool, but for some people could be very important. We don't have boundaries down here, and just a few others, but you do have, the major ones: split and edit boundaries, trim, fixed normals, things like that. So you've got a good majority of the polygon tools, but certainly there's some you don't have. You don't have offset. Like I said, you don't have the remesh, the Smart Brush. So if you're doing heavy polygon editing, Design X may be the better choice. If you're doing more mechanical parts like you see here, where you're primarily bringing the mesh in, doing alignments and just cutting sections and building, and you're not really editing the mesh much, then Design X Essentials would be fine. So that's just something to keep in mind. All right, let's move on to region groups. Now, the biggest thing you'll notice that is different in the region groups is the auto segment capability. What that does in Design X is it'll automatically go through the whole part and auto segment it for you. You can set some settings. In Design X Essentials, you don't. So essentially what you would have to do is pick an area and then do the insert command or merge or split, primarily the insert command. So it's a little bit basically more of a manual process. Now, on a part like this, more your mechanical parts that, don't have a gazillion features on it, it's not a big deal. I mean, you can manually add them. I mostly use them for setting up coordinate systems and then extracting planes and centers of cylinders and, things like that. So, if you're doing 5 or 10 regions on a part, not a big deal. If you're doing hundreds, it could be a big deal. So be aware of that. Okay, that's your region group. Let's move on to alignment. The difference here in alignment is a couple. You don't have some of these. Target sphere, that's for typically long range scanners. Okay, you definitely have a line between scan data, which is taking multiple scans and aligning them. You have interactive alignment, which is doing a coordinate system. And you also have transform scan data, which is like moving it or scaling it, rotating it, things like that. So you have those. You don't have some of these others where you can like align scan data or like a solid body to scan data or do like a data match alignment or this best fit. You don't have any of those, but you have the major three. And I think, again, for most people, this is all they're going to need for either aligning scan data or putting it in a coordinate system. Moving on, let's go to the sketch menu. And let's actually just double click a sketch so we're actually kind of in that mode. We'll do that on both here. Go down and just grab a sketch of some sort. Okay, so we activate it. Now, one of the big differences right away is auto sketch. Auto sketch, goes through and tries to automatically fit geometry to your mesh sketch. Again, I personally don't use it a lot. It works okay on simple geometry, but most real world stuff that's really complicated, I find you spend more time trying to fix all the things it doesn't do right. You might as well just done it from the get-go, or it constrains things the wrong way, etc. But that's personal choice. So you don't have that. Of course, you have smart dimension, you have your constraints, and then you have a lot of the tools. Of course, line, 3-point arcs, and of course these have drop downs for different ways of making arcs. You've got all of those. The one thing you don't have that I use is the slot command. Again, can you do it manually, make a box and then fit some tangent circles, or just do it by hand? Yeah, but if you do a ton of slots, this would be a consideration. You've got the trim, the resize, you fill it, all your basic stuff. The one you don't have is the merge, where you want to merge two sections together. Again, is it the end of the world? Could you just draw a new one? Sure, but it is nice for things. You've got your convert entities in both, of course, and you've got your ability to mirror and do patterns and stuff. You don't have these here: silhouette, convert to spline, and text to spline. And then the other thing I should point out in the sketch tools is you only have mesh sketch here, where let's exit out of Design X and go back. We have mesh sketch and standard sketch. That's just a 2D sketch. You don't even have to have scan data. Now, theoretically in Design X Essentials, you can get around that just by doing a mesh sketch. You just have to have a mesh to create a sketch. You don't even have to create the sketch on the mesh, but you do have to have a mesh to be able to do it. So slight difference. If you were trying to do a lot of design or creating things not necessarily tied to a mesh, so to speak, then it could be a bigger deal not having that here down in Design X Essentials. So no standard sketch, only mesh sketch. I think for most people there's an easy enough workaround, but there are some things in the sketch tools that could be of importance. For example, you can sketch text and do a few things in the sketch tools that you don't have in the mesh sketch. So just be aware of that. Not a ton, but creating text would be one of them. Okay. So other than that, going back to sketch, they're pretty much the same. Now, just like sketch not having just the regular sketch, when you get to 3D sketch, here we have 3D mesh sketch and 3D sketch. When you come down here to Design X Essentials, you only have 3D sketch. Now, what is the difference between 3D sketch and 3D mesh sketch? Well, they have a lot of the same tools. For example, you can do splines and offsets and different things. But one of the biggest difference in how they work is 3D sketch just creates a sketch where you drop points. So if you're creating a spline, it's where you drop those points. Where if you're doing a mesh sketch, it's not only where you drop those points, but it'll actually follow the mesh and stay right on the mesh. And there's certain times you use one and you use the other. I use personally mostly the standard sketch mode. And if I want to hug the mesh really tight, I'll just add more points. But there's sometimes I don't want to follow the mesh exact. So I end up using the sketch, standard sketch, more than the mesh sketch, but that doesn't mean you wouldn't need it at times. So, and if you're doing in general, if we go back to this, if you're doing a lot of really kind of freeform surfacing, let's say you're scanning the exterior of a boat or a vehicle, and you're doing a lot of surface work, you're definitely going to want Design X. You're going to be limited, and we'll get to that here more in a minute. But, in Design X, you can create cross sections and boundaries and UV curves and intersections and all kinds of stuff. And down here, you can do some of that, but you're doing basically splines and some offsetting, and then the trimming up and cleaning of those splines. You're not going to do all of these patch networks and all the stuff over here you see. It's grayed out right now because I don't have anything created, but there's a lot of tools in both regular sketch and in the mesh sketch. So just keep that in mind. Again, if you're working with a lot of more organic shapes, more surface modeling stuff, doing a lot of hybrid modeling, you may have to look at Design X versus Essentials. Let's go on to the Model tab between the two. Now, one of the things right away you're not going to have in Design X Essentials is a lot of the wizards, okay? So we have these wizards for doing things like the Loft Wizard, the Extrusion Wizard, the Revolve Wizard, the Pipe Wizard. So if you do a lot of pipe work or tubular stuff, having the Pipe Wizard is really nice. So keep that in mind. The one I use the most is definitely the Loft Wizard and the Pipe Wizard. For certain things, it just works well. You do have your standard, extrude, revolve, loft, sweep. You don't also have the solid primitives, which lets you select geometry and automatically fit like a sphere, a torus, a cone, a cylinder. It's handy sometimes. Again, it's not that you can't do that. It's just you're going to have to cut a section, find the center, do the revolve, and this just automates that. Okay, both for surfaces and solids. You don't have the primitives and you don't have the wizards. Okay, so keep that in mind. But you have all your normal stuff. Also, the auto surface. So you do have some surfacing. The auto surface is here, but there's a few limitations to that. Generally, you're fine, but if you want to auto surface it, but then go in and do more manipulation to it, you don't have as many controls in Design X Essentials as you do with Design X. And in addition, in Design X, you have some of the legacy tools in here. So the older auto surfacing, the older hole filling, things like that. You don't have those here in Design X Essentials. And there are times I do go back and use some of those legacy tools because they do have some nice features. They work a little different, and sometimes I like the results for those. So keep that in mind. You do have Mesh Fit Surface. That's where you kind of suck a surface down to a shape. Great for things like impellers and things that just have like a big curved surface. It is a nice tool to have. So again, none of the wizards. And then across here, you have pretty much all of the other kind of what I'd call manipulation, cut, boolean, fillet, draft, shell. You don't have emboss, not a big deal. You've got most of these trim commands here. But when you get over here, you don't have some of the ability to do like a fill face or refit. You don't have some of these, move face, delete face, replace face, split face. All you have is transform body, which lets you move it, rotate it, scale it, things like that. Again, if you're doing heavy surfacing where you're doing a lot of cutting and filling and splitting and moving faces around, these are nice tools. So if again, you're doing heavy surfacing, you're going to miss out on some of these tools. And some of it would be hard to replicate in Design X Essentials. Okay. And then last, you have this whole exact surfacing. This gets more into that patch surfacing work I was talking about. You don't have that at all. So that's another thing. So also just kind of keep that in mind. And then the other thing you don't have is the live transfer. Okay. So the live transfer allows you, so instead of when you're done with your work, okay, and you've built your model here, let's turn off the scan data. Here's our solid body. Normally you would export a neutral CAD, like an IGES, a step, a parasolid. But the full-blown Design X has this live transfer, and you can actually go directly to SolidWorks, Creo, Inventor, NX, AutoCAD, and Solid Edge. And what that means is it actually rolls back the history tree and rebuilds the entire model in whatever system you pick here. Now you have to have that system, loaded on the same computer. It's going to open it up and it's going to run it. And if you're trying to basically get back to a native file, for example, SolidWorks or NX, and get that history tree, which gives you a lot of editing capabilities in that native CAD system, that is only available in Design X, the full-blown version. In regular Design X Essentials, you only have those neutral formats. So I would say 20% of the time when we're doing work for people, they want a native file. Most people can work just fine with a neutral file without an issue. But again, that's something you'll have to consider. So at the end of the day, what product is right for you? Well, if you're really heavy on the surfacing side of it, or really heavy in the point cloud world, long range scanners or some scanners that just output point clouds, you're absolutely going to need Design X. If you're doing more mechanical parts like the part you see here, and they could be certainly much more complicated as far as number of features and stuff, but generally they're prismatic. You might have a few mesh fit surfaces, some lofts, some sweeps, these kind of basic shapes. You're going to be fine with Design X Essentials. Things may take you a little bit longer to do because you don't have some of the wizards or some of the automation, but you can definitely get the job done with Design X Essentials. And also keep in mind, you can start with Design X Essentials and you can upgrade. You can pay the difference and get the full-blown Design X. So it's a nice product to have. It's half the price of Design X, so it's a great way to get into the reverse engineering world with a very powerful product. Instead of trying to use some of this freeware or systems that just weren't really designed to work with 3D scan data. It is, it can handle scan data of any size. It can bring in, multiple scans and align them and clean it up and just, do a lot of things you're just not going to be able to do in another system. However, again, if you're doing big point clouds, long range data, and a lot of surfacing, and or heavy polygon manipulation, mesh editing, you're really probably going to need the full-blown Design X.